Subscribe, please.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I am here with something that has actually been niggling at me for a little while, wanting to get my hands on it, and it is Brave Little Belgium. It's by Hollandspiele Games, and it's designed by Ryan Hellman and Dave Shaw. And actually, one of the big reasons I wanted to get my hand on this is just the box itself, the big yellow box. Well, small yellow box. It's actually not that big, but the yellow just stood out to me. And I've seen it on Facebook and other websites. And something just kept niggling at me. I wanted to try it out. I hadn't gotten around to it, and I ended up talking with one of the designers, Ryan, and we went back and forth a little bit. And I ended up getting sent a review copy of Brave Little Belgium to go through for you guys. So let's go over it real quick. This is simulating the German invasion of Belgium during World War I, when they had demanded that the Belgians allow them to march through their territory so they could move into France, where they were really wanting to invade. Belgians said no, so the Germans were like, screw you, we're coming in anyway, which kind of historical for them. And this recreates the Belgian defense. And then over here to the right side, this is where the Germans are coming in, trying to take them out. And I gotta say, one of the things that really stuck out to me was how simple the box is when you get it. When you first open it up, there's not a lot to it. This is a basic war game designed for 2 players. The components are very simple. I actually kept the cardboard piece. This little sheet here is all the counters that you get. It is very, very thick, though. Let me show you guys that. You can see how thick that is. Now, they are die cut, so when you're punching them out, I would suggest being careful. Probably use an X-Acto blade to take and go along the edges and pop it loose from the sprue itself so you don't get any tearing. I only had one counter that started to pull away just a little bit as I was punching them out because I wasn't that careful. But after I started using a knife to cut them out, it wasn't an issue at that point. But you get that. You get the paper map, which is more of a cardstock map. It's not thin paper. It's a thicker cardstock. The counters, you get 8 of these D6, small little D6 dice. And this is one of the ones I'm going to ding them on. I would have liked to have seen these maybe be in 2 colors, maybe white, 4 white and 4 red, or something along those lines, because you are rolling the dice to take and symbolize the combat going back and forth. And it would have made it a little bit easier if there had been multiple colors in the game box itself to help you differentiate, so you could roll dice together when you have combat going on. But it's not like a bunch of us don't have other dice lying around anyway, so I grabbed out some of my double 6 dice, which, by the way, if you like these, the double 6 dice, which is a 12-sided D6, it has 1 through 6 on it twice. They are currently doing their second round Kickstarter, so if you want some of these dice and you've had a hard time finding them, they're on Kickstarter now. Go ahead and back them. They're not that expensive. Depending on how many you get, you'll get a bunch of dice for like $20 or so, just depending on whatever you want to order. So you get that map, counters, dice, and a small rule book. And I do mean small. You can see, I think it's like 4 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, it's basically 2 sheets of paper. That's it. That's all the rules. And then in the back, I am definitely pleased that they put the setup diagram, because I was a little curious there at first if I was doing it exactly right. And this on the back did make that much easier when it came to setup. Now you'll notice there's a lot more. Oh, I knocked one around. I forget where it was. We'll just throw it there. Call it good, because these guys appear randomly anyway. You'll notice that on the setup, there's nowhere near the amount of green that there is on the board right now. We'll go over that here in just a sec. The game itself is a simplistic chit pull mechanic. There's commander chits, which are these down here, which will come into play later on as we move through the turns, that signify when the different forces will activate. I've got them put in my little hex bowl here. and you'll see that they have some end turn counters. Once you draw 3, the turn is over, and then there are counters for events, and these are basically like special bonuses that whatever side, so the Belgians or the Germans, will get, and these don't activate the moment that you pull them out. So you'll pull them out, you'll put them over here in your chip pull box, and then once you use whatever the event is, you'll flip it over, and you'll see that it has its event use side. And the neat part about these is the events can be used more than once. So it's not just you pull out the event chit and then you use it and it's taken out. It actually gets put back into the cup for use later on in the turns. Now, it's possible you won't always draw them, just like you won't always draw unit counters when the turn ends. So it gives that randomization that helps with solitaire play. And there is a mechanic that comes into it when the Germans don't have all of their armies activated. You'll see over here on the right side of the board, there's a little track that says atrocities. So if all 3 end turn counters have been drawn and the Germans have not got to activate, they can take and activate their armies anyway. But if they do, they have to roll a dice, and on a 4, 5, or 6, it counts as an atrocity, and you'll move through this track on down. And once you take and hit 5 on that track, that is an automatic loss for the Germans. So they have the chance to be more aggressive, but if they are, they will take and lose the game, because the moment they hit 5, bam, they're done. The other units that are on the board, they're really easy to understand. We have our standard native symbols. So you have your cavalry with that, and then we have our infantry, which have their strengths. The die symbol is the combat strength. The backside, you can see, still has the infantry, but this side has a white stripe and a 5 on it instead, which means it needs a 5 or higher to hit. This side has a 4, no stripe. It's its full strength side. So real simple system there. And then we also have what are called forts. We have major forts and minor forts. The minor forts are the blue French ones, and the major forts are the Belgian ones. And they operate a little bit differently. There's a siege mechanic that's involved when they're attacked, but the basic combat is still the same. You're rolling equal to or higher than the number involved. The only thing is these forts actually do have steps, and they can take losses, which of course you'll take and rotate around as they take losses. So the basic gist of the game itself is the Germans are trying to push through, and they have to take out 2 forts. One here at, I'm going to try to say all this right, Namur, and the other one at Liege. So if they take out those 2 forts and get a unit past this diamond line that's over here on the west side of the map, they just need to have 1 infantry. Can't be a cavalry, because cavalry do move faster. But if it's a infantry counter over here in one of these spaces past that, they win. And you'll notice down here on the turn track, it's color-coded at the end. The Germans have to do it by the 19th through the 21st to take and win. It's a draw if they do it in the August turn, 22nd through the 24th. And it's a win for the Belgians, I think, on the 25th through the 27th. Let me look real quick. Yeah, they do fail if they don't get it done by this point. So the game turn ends here, boom, the Germans have failed. So they have to accomplish those goals by the 19th through the 24th on the turn record track. You'll also see that more units will become involved into the game as the turns go on. The French, or the blue ones, will have a couple more French armies that will be able to activate, because you see their command counters are here, so they can't actually be drawn. We'll just be drawing the Germans and the Belgians to start with. Then we'll add in 1 French army, then we'll add in the other French army and the other German army down over here to the bottom right. And then, of course, we'll finish up with a small British army that's located here, just a few counters located to the west. And really, that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. It's not a hard game. It's a very pared down, basic game where you're racing as the Germans to get through, and you're trying to block them off as the Belgians with whatever troops that you have available. The French and the British troops really do need to be brought in because the Belgians don't have a whole lot to put in front of them, and they really will get stomped by those large stacks of German armies because it is stacked combat. You're not going to take and just have like one counter versus one counter. You can have a big army in one of these squares pushing their way through. Now, I mentioned earlier about the random setup, and that has to do with these question mark pieces. Now, I'm not going to take and flip them over now. We'll do that when we start playing the game. But it's basically their National Guard, the Belgian Civil Guard, or what are these things called? The Garde Civique. So their civilian guard. Those are random. They have combat strengths on them, but some of them are blank on the other side to represent the fact that they're nothing. So it gives you a randomization that there may be a unit there, but then again, there may be not. Down over here on the left side of the board, you see the guard setup, and you'll roll 2d6 to determine where they're going to appear on the map. Now, they do say in the rule book that there are some variables that you can take and do for variations. Let's pull this out here. You can take and do a free setup where the Belgian player can take and set their forces wherever they want. Or, what was the other setup that they had? Yeah, the couple of different setups they had is the random, well, you have the random setup for the guard, or you can take and actually decide with your opponent to take and deliberately pick where you want the guard. You'll still take and place them face down and shuffle them up, and then have just the question mark side face up when you place them, so you don't know exactly what's where, but you would get to choose where you were placing your counters. And then there's also the possibility for the Belgian player to not have to have historical starting locations for their other actual known units. And then there's the possibility of having a German handicap in the game. Before starting the game, you can have the German player roll one die and have the amount, rounding fractions up, place the atrocities marker on that space of the track that corresponds to that result. For example, rolling a 3 or 4 would place the marker on the 2 space of the atrocities track. It gives them less atrocities to do during the game, so they wouldn't have as many free activations, extra activations for their forces. Like I said, other than that, that's it. So let's take and actually play a little bit of Brave Little Belgium, let you guys see what the game is all about. We'll start drawing our random counters here in just a sec. There is one other thing when it comes to starting the game, and that has to do with the German Calvary. All the German Calvary are allowed to take and have one free move and attack before the game starts to kind of signify their version of Blitzkrieg, I guess, whatever they were doing in World War I, their surprise attack against the Belgians. And at that point, after the German Cavalry are gone, that's when you're going to take and start drawing the counters normally and run the game through as normal at that point. Now, there was one thing that I was a little curious about when it came to the German Cavalry, and I'm going to play it as it's written in the rule book, even though I'm kind of sketchy on it. The cavalry for the army, the 4th Army located down over here to the right, I'm going to activate it as well because it says all German cavalry, even though the activation chit for that unit won't be in the game for a couple of turns. So, like I said, I'm not 100% on whether or not it does include that cavalry. I'm going to play it like it does because it says all cavalry, and we'll go with that. Now, one last thing, when you're taking and moving your units, you can see on the board you have straight lines and then you have squiggle lines. The straight lines cost 1 to move through, and the squiggle lines cost 2 movement points to move through. The cavalry all have 4 movement points, and the infantry all have 2 movement points. And the civic guard, they have no movement points. Whatever location they're in is the location they're in. So they don't get to move from wherever. So that random starting can either hurt you or hurt you depending on where those counters end up. But you are lucky in the fact that they're not all going to end up in one place, because when you do the random startup, only 2 can end up in any one location. If you have more than 2 that go there, you get to re-roll and place them somewhere else. So you can't have the dice god be evil and have all your guard located some low, out of the way place and leave you kind of open to being ruffle stomped by the Germans. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to take and start off. And I was looking at this. I don't know if it's a good strategy or not, but we'll find out. First, I'm going to take this lower cavalry, and he's going to go 1, 2, 3, and he's going to go after this civil guard here. And these other 3 up here, I'm going to have them run towards the center to see if they can start trying to punch a hole and see what happens there. We'll have this one. Now, this is a squiggle line, so this is 2. So that's 2, 3. The middle one here is going to go 1, 3, 4. So he'll get there. And the bottom one, if I'm knocking him over, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And he'll land there. All right, so again, this is just, we're not doing the chit draw yet. This is just the first German special cavalry turn that they get to have. Now, once you have units that are located in the same space like we do here, you'll take and go ahead and flip over any civil guard. So there actually is one here, and there is none up there. And up here at the top right of the board is where the battle board is. So you'll take your little combat chit, you'll place that here, and then you'll take and move your combatants up. That way you can keep track of where the combat's being located and then each side, so you know how to roll for them. When you're taking and rolling for them, the combat strength of a unit can be 4s, 5s, or 6s. And basically they were advising you to take and roll for all your 4s, all your 5s, and then all your 6s. So you'll keep track of which is which. You don't necessarily have to do that if you do have extra D6s that you can bring to use different colors to differentiate the different strengths of the different units. They were just saying that because they're all the same color D6s in the box itself. So we're going to start with this combat. It's going to be real simple. Okay, this Civic Guard, I'll grab it up, hold it for the camera real quick. You can see is a 6, so it only has a combat strength of 6, which means it does need a 6 or higher, or just 6 rather, to take and hit. And this cavalry has a 5, so on a 5 or 6, the cavalry is going to hit, and on a 6 for them. We'll take and use the regular red for the Belgians, and then we'll use the yellow for the German cavalry. All right, big money. Oh, they come out swinging. Look at them. The cavalry miss, but the Belgians hit. Now, you can see, because there's no unit, this is a striped side, which means that they have, it's the reduced side, but there's no unit on this side, which means they only take 1 hit to die. So, just like that, the German cavalry is destroyed. We'll take and grab our Civic Guard. We'll put them back here into the combat marked hex. They did very well. Now we'll mark this one, and there's 2 cavalry units located up here, and they're going against this one. Let me hold it up. The Belgian 6th, and they are all strength 5, so it doesn't necessarily matter on that. We'll use our D6s to represent, or our double 6s rather, to represent the German cavalry, and again the red die will represent our Belgian infantry. Ooh, no hits across the board. 2, 2, and a 1, so there was no score going there, no attacks landed. Since that combat failed, no hits were succeeded, the attacking units will be retreated back 1. All right, so the way it works on this with the combat on who you're going to decide on who's going to take and retreat back or not is it's the side that suffers the most hits is going to take and retreat in combat unless the enemy is completely wiped out. If they're completely wiped out, then of course the attackers do get to stay. And if it's tied like we had there with no hits, then the attackers are forced to retreat. So they will go back to their previous square. And again, there's only 1 attacking round when it comes to it. So you do all your hits and then you're done. You don't sit there and keep going until one side is eliminated. All right, now we're actually ready to start the game. We'll take and pick up with part 2 when we start drawing our chits and see how well the Belgians can do holding off this large German advance. All right, that's going to be it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next one.